You couldn't exactly say Leinster slayed the Dragons. It was more like they slowly put them to sleep. So hopefully we won't do the same to you because it's time to start harping on rugby. Hello, my name is Jeff Pagano, and welcome to Harpin On Rugby, where with the help of some fellow fans, I get the chance to harp on what's going on with Leinster, Ireland, and the wider rugby world. First up, joining me this week is someone earning cap number 38, who is also the early pace setter in the Harpin Prediction League. Coming to us from the Great Rock of Gibraltar, welcome to Mr. Rich Mifsud.
Good evening, lads. Lovely to see you again.
Indeed. And our second guest is making pod appearance number 14. And when it comes to our prediction league, he's doing his part to keep me company down at the lower part of the table after 2 rounds. Hello once more to Mr. Jay Long.
And give myself space for a comeback, Jeff. That's all.
Hi, guys.
It. Great to be back. Thanks for having me
That's it. You're loving everyone else and Jeff also insecurity. Yeah. Exactly. We all know it. Yeah. Okay, listen, let's crack on with our feature match of the week, which was, of course, Leinster v Dragons in round 2 of the 24-25 United Rugby Championship. It was played at the Aviva Stadium on Friday evening, and the fans in the lower tier were treated to a clear, dry, but chilly enough evening as the Dragons out half Lloyd Evans got the match underway, kicking towards the South Stand, Rich.
He did indeed, and that's the excitement over for that half. They kick off. We return with some interest from the kickoff. First few minutes, it's just a few both teams feeling each other out. Really, nothing too spectacular to talk about other than a lovely 50-22 from Dragons, which pinned us back into our own 22, obviously. They got the line out from that. A few phases later, it was obviously our first defensive set of the half. It was interesting that in our 22 we go 14 men standing, one sweeping, which is different depending on which part of the field we're in. I don't know whether I presume that's by design and not because they're defaulting to that. But it's a good defensive set from us. Basically forces them to dink it over the top. So they're already starting to show some invention. That's Dragons, that is. And to be fair to them, they were the ones who were the more creative in the half as a whole. So they didn't get over the top. Thankfully, Will Connors is alert, plucks it from the air, and then we go forward. So few phases later, Dragons in possession again, and then these are the worrying signs, and I can only put it down to the fact that our centres haven't played together that often, and certainly not in the new Ninaba defensive system. But our centre channels were a bit porous. In a couple of minutes, Dragons made 2 clean line breaks through the centres. Thankfully, one of them, they didn't get far, and our defence reset itself. And the other one took pretty much a last gasp tackle from Jimmy O'Brien, whom I thought had an excellent game. First time back in his more usual happy hunting grounds. So he managed to catch the Dragons player, and it ended up in a scrum from which we got a penalty. Time moved on a wee bit more. We got a 50-22. Jamie Osborne with a lovely kick downfield. But again, and this again started to this was the first one, and what I'm about to describe is giving away a cheap pen while in possession in their 22. We gave 2 away. We shipped 2 very cheap coach killer penos in their 22. Yeah. Um, and it's a timing issue clearly. One of them was Deeney, the other one was adjudged to be Tom Clarkson, although I think he was a wee bit hard done by. But again, we gave two away. This was the first of them in pretty promising positions, especially from a Leinster perspective. Um, Again, and what I'm describing sounds a bit bitty, but the fact of the matter is that the match itself was very bitty. There was hardly any rhythm. Neither of the two sides were creating any concerted or consistent pressure on the opposition, and it was pretty much a game of give and take throughout. About 10 minutes in, we ship a pen about 30 meters out, but I don't think that the Evans was in tune with with the shot clock, and he fluffed it badly from a very kickable position. Like I said, pretty central, 30 meters out, just off on the right side for a right-footed kicker, but he fluffed it. But anyway, we for the next 7 minutes, again there was a lot of play, but within from 22 to 22, but very little danger between. Nobody created pretty much anything. Lots of imprecision, lots of inaccuracies. Our passing wasn't up to scratch. It was very slow, very pedestrian. We weren't finding a great deal of ingenuity to breach the Dragons' defense, which it must be said stood up to anything and everything that we threw at them. And it was only really when we tried and went quickly to the wings either side that we created at least an anticipation of what was to come to pass in the sexy second half that Jay's going to talk about. But so anyway, game goes on. There's a high shot on Tom Clarkson, and it ends up in a yellow card for Coleman. We go to their 22 for a line out from the ensuing penalty. So they're down to 14. We get the line out. We actually pretty much fluff it in the midfield, but it works out well because Ross Byrne is pretty alive to it. He flings a pass over to his left in anticipation that somebody's going to go there, so it doesn't go to hand. It actually goes to ground, but it bounces up nicely. Jimmy O'Brien picks it up, passes to Charlie Tector, who offloads to Jack Conan, who thunders over for a try. So we're 5-0 up after 18 minutes. Conversion is missed. Again, you think for Ross Byrne that's pretty standard conversion for him. He's nailed far more difficult ones. I don't know what the conditions were like on the pitch as to wind or otherwise, but it seemed pretty calm from watching it from television. So the half goes on. We move into the second quarter. We're 5-0 up. But again, we don't really create any momentum from this. We get a pen on the halfway line. Once again, we go for touch in their 22. And once again, we concede yet another coach killer penalty in their 22, hand over possession. This results in about 5 minutes later in us conceding a penalty with Jordan Lama being caught in possession and Will Connors going in off his feet to give Dragons a penalty, which they this time convert. So 5-3 after 25 minutes. And now the highlight of the half, 27 minutes in, Dev Toner comes out on the big screen. This boy. And that is the highlight of the half. The lad was enjoying his moment in the sun. I'll tell you what, bless him. So anyway, like I say, play continues. More error-strewn stuff from both sides. It has to be said. Nobody builds up any form of concerted pressure. Max Deegan again with a very good carry, charges up We eventually get into their 22 and we give away yet another penalty, the third of the half in possession in their 22. And I think, that is beginning to tell its own story now. So and on this occasion it was for a crock roll. And there were quite a few throughout the course of the match from both sides. But anyway, we plod on, almost coming up to half time. 37 minutes in, a few carries from Jimmy O'Brien and Jack Conan. They lead to a pen. We go again to touch about 8 meters out. On this advantage, we get penalty advantage. On this occasion, we get penalty advantage. James Ryan gets tackled as he's going for the ball. We go pick and goes at their line. The ball comes out to Ross Byrne, who's been screaming for it for ages. There's a 2-on-2. There's Jimmy O'Brien and Ross on the left wing. Ross dummies from about 4 meters out, and he dots down on the line. So good play by him. Glad he went for it and didn't dither. I don't know whether the cover would have been across to Jimmy to bundle him into touch had he passed. So, but anyway, we go 10-3 up. Conversion is once again missed. And of course, they restart, and lo and behold, we give away another crock roll, Peno from the restart. Dragons convert. So instead of going into the sheds at 10-3, we go in at 10-6. And to be fair, 10-6 is probably par for the course for that first half because, Dragons, we weren't brilliant, but not by any stretch of the imagination. We were error-strewn, very slow distribution from the halfbacks. The kicking was loose. Tactically, we weren't really playing in the right areas, and there was a distinct lack of creativity. And like I said, the defense in our centres was porous on occasions, and like I said, it's a timing issue. So all in all, an underwhelming, and I think I'm being kind here, first half, mainly through our own inaccuracies, and without wishing to be disparaging at all against Dragons, a better team, or even Dragons without, with a better team of their own, they it must be said they had, I think it was about 13 or 14 on the injury list, including some of their big hitters, some of their internationals. A better team would most certainly have hurt us in that first half, without a shadow of a doubt. The one bright point, I think, is line-out, which has been a woe for us for too long, especially the last season, the latter stages of last season. But the line-out was on point. I don't think we fluffed a single one, maybe one, I think, in the second half, but I'll let Jay talk about that. So, in a nutshell, I've managed to speak 15 minutes about what was a soporific half of rugby. Over to you.
Yeah, it was pretty bad, all right. I mean, we spoke before the season started about the expectations for Leinster for this season. I mean, every season, but given the way the last three have gone, the expectations are pretty much, it's right up to a line of trophy or bust, as far as near as we can get to that. And so I suppose it's easy to judge even these early matches of the season. You're looking for displays, you're looking for a kind of a ethos throughout the team that they're playing, that you're with all due respect to the Dragons and the Edinburghs of the world, you can't help but have a mindset, well, if we play like this in May, we know what's going to happen. Oh. And also with regard to home matches, I mean, it's a different mindset this season. It's not the RGS anymore. They're saying that the crowd was around 18,000, which would have actually, but the old RDS would have been jammers, but you're talking the lower tier of the Aviva, so it can be a bit cavernous, this kind of atmosphere and stuff. They tried, because it was a nighttime kickoff, they had the lights display and they had all that going on, but then you come to the rugby on the pitch, and to be fair, the one thing I will say is like literally the very first kick of the game, first kickoff, the Dragons kicked off and went to Ross Byrne, and he tried a little dink over the top to exit. It went to Jimmy O'Brien. He got to halfway. That looked amazing. That was a great start, but that fell through. And that's all very well having that prepared at the start of the game and stuff. But when the game progresses, as you say, the Dragons' defense started kicking in, and we just found it more and more difficult to get moves going, and we pretty much needed the extra man to kind of work the space. And like you say, a couple of handy bounces. Now we took advantage of those bounces. A real good offload, quick offload from Jimmy O'Brien. Yep. To get it through there for that try, but and there was positive, especially on our own defense as well, where we're almost. I mean, I got the impression that pretty much for the 80 minutes, the Dragons were not scoring. That's right. They might have broken the line, but the scramble, but when they did, was the scramble was there and stuff. A lot of positives on that side of the ball, but obviously it's the creativity you want. It's the creating chances, and also not the silly mistakes. That crossing thing at the line out, I swear to God, it's a really coach killer, fan killer, everyone associated with your team killer, especially multiple times in the game. But anyway, listen, Jay, what do you think?
Yeah, like it's very hard not to knock into the words like, frustrating, lackluster, and we just seemed it was like an extremely labored first 40 minutes. Like we were pushing a piano up the stairs pretty much every time. Anytime, as Rich was kind of put it very, very well. Like every time we got something going, there was something silly. There was a crap pass. We finally got into the 22. We screwed the line out with the no access to the tackler. There was a croc roll, etc., etc. They were the killers, and I think it's fair to say that even through the lens of kind of early season blues, it would have been it was a poor 40 minutes from us. But compliment the Dragons, as Rich was saying, like they looked really good early doors, right? We made them look good. We apparently couldn't lay a hand on them, except for Jimmy O'Brien for a short period of time. But yeah, I mean, it was the Dragons didn't stop swinging punches and to the last 80, like you could see us even the last Maul turnover, 80 minutes on the clock. Dragons of old may have just kind of folded over like a wet cardboard box at that stage. But that was good to see. But on our side, like I think it was a pretty naive performance, particularly around the breakdown in the first 40 minutes. Like Dragons were making it into a proper shit house, and that's fair. They were being allowed to do it. We should have been wiser to it for a long, way earlier, especially with the back row we had. Like we're saying that there was new caps and stuff like that, but that's handily a Champions Cup back row for Leinster there, So but Dragons, in fairness to them, were anything but east-west when they were rolling. They were all over Luke for a long period of time, so he had it pretty rough back there. But I mean, he's a seasoned campaigner. He should have been pointing that out to the ref more. I know he did in it like halfway through the second half, but 60 minutes in is probably a little long. From a positives point of view, like it was nice that Church got a scrum penalty in 5 minutes in on his big day. I thought Jimmy O'Brien was fantastic, as Rich was saying. I think Jamie Osborne's going to give us a happy headache at fullback when Hugo comes back into the fold. And I thought Max Deegan had another very, very strong game. And again, he's putting some doubters in their place, which is nice to see. From a half-back point of view, I think the first 40 was night and day different to what we saw last week, and probably not in a good way. I think both of those guys like Ross and Luke are well able to handle a game, but the combination of the two of them, it's just a pace I don't want us to see us play it anymore. I thought that, and we'll talk about it later on when Gunne comes on. But again, it was tiring opposition, etc. But that first 40 minutes was it could be depressing at times with the type of. It seemed the rest of the guys were waiting for us to get the ball away, do something, and I just don't like seeing it. But that being said, it was nice to see Ross back himself for a try. But yeah, and I suppose the most important thing about that 40 minutes is that it eventually ended, and we could move on. Thankfully enough.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on Ross Byrne and Luke McGrath, I mean, it's a big difference when you look at last week when it was Gibson Park and Sam Prendergast. But it's a certain type of rugby, and to be fair to the two lads from Friday night, it's not their natural game, but they are trying to play it. You could see Luke, getting to the breakdowns and trying to get there. And I mean, Gibson Park has just got this natural thing where he's already moving to the next breakdown before this one is even over. Almost, it's like he's plotted out the next few phases. And Luke and Ross, they play a different way. Ross likes to sit back, but they were trying to play this way. They were trying to play with the urgency. But if there's just that one little thing out from the start, from the base of the ruck or wherever it's coming from, that's going to throw it out further down the line. They're going for that long pass to the wing and stuff like that. If the timing isn't right and stuff, it's going to throw the thing out. It just wasn't happening. But the way the scores were going, it was, Dragons had a chance for 3, and then we'd get 5. Then they'd get 3, and then we'd get 5. And it was like we were always ahead of them. But like everyone said, and it is a fair comment. I know it sounds arrogant to a lot of other maybe fans of other teams, but from Leinster's point of view, like 10-6 at halftime, like credit to the Dragons, they come with a plan. There's kind of a boilerplate plan maybe of playing Leinster in that, listen, we know we're the underdogs. We know they're at home. We know what way they're going to play. But like, as you say, if we can get in their face, maybe do a bit of shithouse around the rucks, disrupt the way, get them off their flow, and then crucially take advantage of chances when they come. They just didn't come for the Dragons, like when it came to scoring tries, but they were definitely doing the first bit and halting us, which all of which left us kind of a bit nonplussed at halftime with the score at Leinster 10, Dragons 6. But before we return to the pod, just a little reminder of all the places you'll find us in the Rugger Sphere. Myself and the lads are recording an extra chat for our YouTube channel, taking a first look at possible selections for the 2025 Lions Tour. And when it comes to online, we've actually moved our HQ to a new address. Just head to Linktree/Harpin On Rugby to get access to all our latest content, as well as our presence on all the social media platforms. Please be sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe as needed. And so we had Ross Byrne getting the second half underway, and it was important we got off to a good start, Jay.
Yeah, and unfortunately, I suppose Rich described the second half as sexy. I would say it's only sexy in comparison to the first half. Yeah. It's like bringing your dodgy mate to the nightclub on purpose, But yeah, I mean, straight away. Keane gave a pen away at the start, right at the end of the first half, and he kind of followed it up with another one right at the start of the second. But we eventually they kicked hour 22. But this and Rich touched on it. Was a really, really nice set of the rush defense. It was a really good example early doors of what it can do. I think it was Max Deegan made a massive hit, followed up by Luke. To get the turnover, and the game kind of falls into pretty much the whole second half really falls into a pattern of we were more than happy, and I think it can be easy to kind of blame Ross for what we are calling totally aimless kicks, but for how often it happens in the game, Ross or us as a team seem more than happy just to allow Ross just to boot the leather off it amidships, keep it in play, hoping the Dragons return it, and they're either going to kick it directly to Jamie O'Brien, which turned out was a massive mistake for the guys. He had a fantastic game, or someone else receives and feeds it to Jamie and lets Jamie make a decision running up to halfway. So that happened again and again and again all the way through the game, and it was in one of these sort of kick receipts to Jamie that kind of where we got a first try off the back of it really. So. Jamie catches and works it wide to Ross up the wing. I have to say that for the pack that we had, well, certainly for the kind of the locks and back row we had, I didn't see we weren't as dominant as I would have expected us to be in contact. We weren't making an awful lot of change, but we do get advantage for Dragons not rolling, and we sling it wide. Deegan makes a lovely burst up to Turner, who gets very, very close. But eventually we kind of knock on, so we move back for the penalty. And Gus McCarthy at the line out, worth mentioning. I thought he had a fantastic game. Another off the production line of ridiculous Leinster hookers that we seem to be producing. So Gus gets it to Deeney on the top, and Gus breaks off himself. And there's a really, really vital turnover from Tector. Probably one of his nicer touches of the game. He obviously had a quieter game this week. He had a bit of a barnstormer last week, but I still think he looks very, very promising. Um, Another year of meat on that man. I think he's going to be very, 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 very good for us. Be interesting to see where he ends up playing. I think I actually quite like him in the centres. It was a bit of a happy accident, that a bit of a Bob Ross this season, seeing him there. But yeah, we pick and jam for a bit off that possession. The ball pops pops off the back to Deegan, who kind of runs a nice line around the edge, and he gets over. And I suppose there's a bit of a kind of TMO review here for this. I think it's one of those cases that it might have been a case of just a lucky first ref phasing of the question. It's one of those ones where it's 50-50 where he could have got it down, but given that the ref said on-field try, there wasn't enough sufficient evidence to turn it over. We probably will say we'd had a reasonably lucky day with the TMO when we get to the Larmer try later on. But that brings us to 17-6 around the 45-minute mark, which kind of brings us on to the kind of next 20 minutes, I guess, which by and large maybe passes by, certainly from a scoreboard point of view. And unfortunately, it's more of the same, really, where we bring in things 90% of the way, and then silly mistakes are bringing us back to square one again and again and again. Like, we lost in this kind of 20 minutes of play, we lost 4 really promising kind of passes of possession where we were in a nice attack, and Ross tries a bit of a mental dink over the top, and nobody's really ready for it. So it's Dragons just call the mark. Tector just kind of spills the ball at the back of a ruck, and it gets a bit messy, and we get turned over and give them a penalty. And Connor's pinged for another neck roll / croc roll / not driving straight through. And then probably more worryingly, which Slimani was pinged at the scrum again. So it seems that he's probably going to need to take some time to get used to how URC refs want to see it happen. But looking back on some of his stats this evening, he was giving away quite a few penalties in his last season, the top 14 as well. So it'd be interesting to see how that goes. And to Rich's point, here this 20 minutes was pretty. There was an awful lot of Dragons opportunities that we were probably lucky that they didn't take advantage of. So there was at this stage, if you think about it, there's only 17-6. By and large, Dragons are probably more than happy with that scoreline, considering what their worst fears would have came in at this stage. And I think they tried to force things a bit. Like, they had a nice, lovely floating pass over the top. They're totally true. And I can't remember who exactly does, but they just pass it directly to Larmer unnecessarily. So bit of a get out of jail free card for us. And likewise, there was some really, really nice possession, really nice attack on their side. Ross darts and goes for an intercept, and in fairness, very, very close to getting that intercept. But I think they said it on comms, and it's clear on the other side they decide to dink it through, which isn't a terrible option.
For some mad reason, I was actually annoyed at him for kicking it.
Yeah,
I shouldn't have been, but that was set up as like a 3-on-1 that may not have got to the try line, but it would have got them to 5 meters.
Yeah, like, I mean, they had Jimmy O'Brien in front of them, which by all means he'd handle everything else that was thrown at him that day. But I mean, he's only human, and a professional side like Dragons can finish a 3-on-1. And I just maybe they're not used to having it in front of Leinster. But again, I mean, that they capture one of those opportunities. This is a different game at this point, now, do they win? Probably not. But I mean, the scoreline does flatter us to a certain extent in terms of what they created, and then they fluffed themselves. So credit to us for some of really, really rushed defense D sets, but also some luck on our side, I think, with the kind of embellishment on the scoreboard. Coming up to around maybe kind of 62-minute mark, probably the kind of the storyline through the week was Cian Healy going off. 281 caps, obviously a massive achievement, and some really, really nice stuff on all the socials afterwards, which hopefully folks can go off and look at. But many replacements at this stage: Milne, Slimani, Joe McCarthy. So a whole new kind of feel to the game. And around the 62-minute mark, we have Josh and Gunne coming on at this stage. And Josh's first contribution is incredible. It's an incredible carry where he burst through approximately 64 Dragons and they're all hanging off him. So it's exactly how you want.
He's still working on his carrying.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know when he's going to finish, but I hope he keeps. I hope he keeps going. But it's just the exact type of impact you want to see a player of his caliber to come in to a dog's dinner of a game like that, and Josh just saying, you know what, this I'm going to do to myself, and he just makes an incredible carry, and Ross off the back of that makes the most casual kick over the top, which Fintan Gunn nearly gathers but gets absolutely melted instead, and knocks on. A bit of couple of phases later, but it's called back for that Josh carry where I think it was Harris. I believe I had written down somewhere. It was Harris makes a bit of a dog shot on Josh. I think Dragons are probably lucky here. It's not probably very dangerous, but equally he makes absolutely no attempt to make a illegal hit.
I actually thought it was his back that made contact with his head. It was weird because he missed him. There was no effort to wrap or anything. But then by the time Josh runs into him, it's his head almost goes into his back, which was like, it was a horrible attempt.
Yeah, like I mean, he makes zero attempts to make a legal hit there. Now he doesn't do an awful lot of damage, but I mean, he could have because he clearly wasn't in control of the impact.
Yeah, so. I think the ref explained that pretty well and got it right by pen only. Yeah.
Yeah, and we could have went back obviously, but we'd gotten an advantage further up the pitch for not rolling away after a couple of breakdowns. So naturally enough, we take the one closer to the try line, and we kick to the corner off the back of that. At this stage, Lee Barron is on, who I think had a good game. I think we're a bit guilty of just totally overlooking Lee Barron because we've heard so much about Gus, and we have on the other side of things we were spoiled for choice on Dan Sheehan and Kelleher. But I like Lee Barron. I think he's also if we didn't have Gus coming up, I think we'd be hearing an awful lot more about Lee Barron. I like him as a player. But yeah, so we had Barron to Conan off the top. A lovely pass out to Big Joe, who just absolutely steamrolls again 3 or 4 Dragons players. Throw another 6 on, lads. He wouldn't have made a difference.
It wouldn't be dragging him into touch by
Mac.
It was right there. It was right there.
Yeah, it was. But yeah, I mean, he showed incredible power and acceleration there. It was one of those ones where you watch a couple of times because it's just so pleasing. And that's the bonus point, right? So I think everybody's starting to the collective sphincters are probably loosening now across Leinsterdom. And Ross converts this one, which is probably one of his best kicks of the night. He didn't have a great night off the tee. So that brings us up to about the 66 minutes mark. So Dragons restart straight away to Joe. So it's a bit of a Joe show for 3 minutes. It's an incredible single lift by Milne. I think it's one of those ones that you'd love info photography to grab a picture of Joe. Bit of aerodynamics there, but it's a great catch. It's a word on Joe. I'm just really looking forward to another season of Joe. The growth last year, hopefully he can keep that up. He has frosted tips now. What's not to love? So yeah, Fintan box kicks there and really, really great pressure and a bit of Conan turnover. We kick to the corner. So it's a Barron line out. He shows some nice footwork, bringing it into contact himself. Gunn's moving us around well here. The speed or the tempo, I suppose is a better term. Difference between Gunn and Lukian earlier on is it's pretty tangible. He has a lovely speed of pass. He has a lovely speed of thought. He's a hungry young fella, right? I mean, Luke's at the other end of his career, but it's great to see. I'd have no hassle watching Gunn start some of the big games for us. The ball eventually gets out to Larmer, who looks initially to be kind of not so much held up over the line, but goes for the try and gets kind of pushed back. And similar happens to Milne, so the result was a scrum. But again, our friend the TMO intercedes here, or at least the Aviva crowd was nice enough to make enough noise when they kind of seen the Larmer impact close up, and you can see. In my mind, it's a pretty clear try from Larmer. I've seen some stuff online that they think it's 2 dodgy calls on our part. I'd agree that the Deegan one's probably lucky enough, depending on what the ref's first call is. But to me, I can pretty much see Larmer getting the tip of that ball down the line. And yeah, it's another try for us. So it's, again, as I said, it's a pretty lucky TMO day. Some days you get those, some days you don't. And that brings us to 29-6. But as Ross misses the kick, and then we're kind of into the last 10 minutes then, and again it almost kind of passes us by through some at this stage the game's probably won. So you can probably forgive the lads a little gun honus. So we had going offloading at the touch. We had a cross. Ross actually kicked a really, really nice cross field into space, but Jimmy just kind of watches it go. He's had to run his arse off at this stage anyway, so Jimmy probably just wants to hit the sheds. Um, but off the back of a pretty sloppy line out, Jack tries to clean up. Jack Cohen tries to clean up, but gets kind of swept out in the air. We kicked a touch, and this is I kind of alluded to this earlier in the pod that this is when you would probably expect Leinster to drive over. You just absolutely steamroll them all over through. But in fairness, the Dragons they still hang on. They stop them all at source, throwing us over and get a scrum. Ultimately, they tried to play from deep from that scrum and knock on. We actually push a scrum penalty, but kind of been going once more from that. He throws an absolutely okay. Fintan Gunn throws a bullet pass out to Ross Bourne, Harry Bourne, I should say, and passes it. I couldn't resist. Bullet pass, Gunn, right itself.
It was worth a shot.
It was worth a go. Harry, so, oh, Jesus. But fires a bullet pass is just too much. But so Harry feeds Jimmy on a really, really nice kind of sneaky line, but Jimmy nearly gets there himself. And then it's the same repeat again. Gunn gets a lovely quick pass out to Harry. Harry floats an absolutely worldly pass out to Eitzal King. And it's a walk in for the young lad on one of the few times we've seen him. So the walk in the Aviva Stadium for Eitzal King was just a really, really nice moment for him. But unfortunately, again, we missed the conversion. So that ties things up in a bow at 34-6. And look, it's another 40 minutes done, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, like you say, it wasn't a great night for Ross in any type of kicking, really. I mean, he was trying things. He was trying kick passes and stuff, and they weren't coming off. The place kicking was. I mean, he's usually good at those. It was just that we can put that down to a bad night at the office. But I think what highlighted Ross's poor kicking night in play was what Jamie Osborne was doing. I mean, basically, Jamie Osborne, that was almost a perfect modern day kind of fullback performance. I think he dropped one. I think he knocked one on early in the game. But overall in the game, it was a case of they kicked to him. And I wasn't sure how many the Dragons had back, but I'm assuming that if they had 3 back, he'd run. But when he ran, they would make something of it. We'd end up, I think one time we ended up scoring a try from the move he started. It was a positive run. Like, he wouldn't just, he'd go directly at them. They'd get him over the halfway line and be on the front foot, and we'd move on from there. Or if they only had 2 back, he would put a laser of a kick that would always found grass and would always get past the Dragons. They'd be turning around and having to do it. It was perfect kind of placement of his kicks. And like you say, really gives us a headache. We had this headache like from that South Africa tour, really, when he played so well. And you're like, what, never mind what's going to happen for Ireland when Keane comes back. How do we get Osborne and Frawley into the Leinster side? Even given the talent we have, but like you say, it's a good complaint. And when you compare that to what Ross was trying to do, and especially the kicking, that's his game. That's all. When he first came up into Leinster, he was putting them on a sixpence, crossfield kicks and stuff. That was his thing, and he's just trying to work within the system and maybe trying to force it a bit. I don't know, but it just wasn't happening. Yeah, like you say, it was interesting seeing Harry at 12. Came in, I think, like himself and Charlie Tector. I think that's a good creative way of using. When we were wondering before the season, we've got all these 10s available, and like, what are we going to do with them? And they found a way. I mean, we've got Robbie Henshaw's probably start later in the season, and of course Jordy Barrett coming as well. So what do we do for games like this? And I think it's a good way of doing it. But listen, we got through the half, like you say, and we got the tries. Maybe it's ironic that there was those 2 TMO calls, because I think you could take those tries away and it might have been a better reflection of the way the game went. But it's a bit of a flattering scoreline. Now, what did you think, Rich, from the second half?
Yeah, there was definitely an improvement in the second half. Not a major improvement, to be fair, but at least it was a tad more pleasing in the eye. absolutely flattered by the scoreline. Yeah, absolutely agree with that. Coming back to you, we've just been talking about Ross, and I really don't want to come across as Ross bashing or anything, because I'm one of those who actually preferred him staying than Joey Carberry staying when that decision was taken, because I felt my opinion was that Ross Byrne was a far more dependable, consistent player than Joey Carberry, who's he's got this meteor what do they call it, mercurial talents which blow hot and cold, which I don't particularly like. But I think his problem is something that you already alluded to, Jeff, and that is that because he's trying to fit in. His natural game is one of control, slow pace, territorial, attritional. That's his style. Uh, Luke McGrath is, as you say, coming to the end of his career, so he's slowing down from what he was. This is the law of life. So I think he is trying, as in Ross. I think he is trying a bit too hard. He's a bit. I think he's wound up very tightly because I think he feels under threat, and he's not wrong to feel under threat because of the talent that's coming up behind him, and that's why we're seeing all these mistakes creeping in. Had you told Ross to play his natural game, his slow, attritional, territorial possession type of game, I can guarantee you he would have slotted all those conversions without a shadow of a doubt. But I think it's impinging on that. As to the rest of it, I thought Finton Gunn, when he came on, made a huge impact. And the word that Jay used is the word to use. It's tempo. You need to keep them guessing. You need to keep them going. I can't remember many, if any, line breaks in that first half. I think we may have had one. In the second half, we had a few more. But I thought our forwards could have done perhaps more in terms of bullying the opposition, at least the ones on show. And it wasn't until we got the heavy hitters on, like Big Joe, and Josh, that you start seeing the inroads, and those inroads create problems for defenses and create the opportunities and create the gaps, and because it's all connected as we know. So yeah, a much improved performance. I would have made those changes way earlier, to be perfectly honest. But I can understand that you have to manage the minutes that players have to play and all the rest of this nonsense that they have to deal with. But I would have swapped, at half time, some of those positions at half time, easy. Harry Byrne had a nice cameo. That was a good pass to his right. That was instinctive, but that's his game. If you give Harry Byrne time to think, he'll fluff it. When he plays instinctively, he gets it done. And that's one of those things that you need to, he's a complete diametrically opposed to his brother. His brother is Mr. By the Book, game playbook champion. So, but yeah, it's good to give them opportunities. I'd be a bit concerned with Harry Byrne because he can't defend for Toffee. So, I'd be really, really scared to have him in a scenario where he has to front up because he can't defend. At least Ross does that. So to his credit. So yeah, an improvement, but it couldn't be worse. It couldn't be worse than the first time, for God's sakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, just finishing on what you're saying about Vincent Gunn and earlier Gus McCarthy. I mean, it's mad. Like you go back 10 years, and if we watch an under-20s, an Ireland under-20s performance, and we say, oh, look at this player, look at that player, and you say, oh, they really look like the real deal. And what would normally happen then is you wouldn't see them for maybe one, maybe two seasons, and they'd get a sub appearance maybe in February and January, and they make a couple appearances. But now you're talking, we're just after seeing these guys in January and July, and they've been playing really well. And here they are, not just coming on for 2-minute cameos at the end. I mean, you got Gus McCarthy starting, and he's ready to play. Yep. You know what I mean? He was impressive with the lineouts and good the carrying and stuff. Is it was no problems with him starting, and then Gunne coming on and changing the tempo and getting involved literally from the word go. It's great to see, and there was another positive from this game. But listen, like I say, we got the tries when we needed, we got the win, a bonus point win, and we're off to start at home in the Viva. Like we say, the final score was Leinster 34, Dragons 6. Okay, so elsewhere in the URC, there were some very interesting results in round 2, not least of which was in Parma, where Zebra scored a shock 42-33 win over 2023 champions Munster. Meanwhile, the other provinces had mixed fortunes against South African opposition. First, Connacht reeled off 29 consecutive points in the second half to overcome the newly crowned Currie Cup champion Sharks at the Dexcom Stadium, while Ulster struggled in Johannesburg, falling 35-22 to the Lions. There were also wins for the Ospreys, Cardiff, Bulls, and Glasgow, which leaves Leinster and Cardiff the only teams with maximum points from 2 matches, and with Connacht in third.
And one advantage of my being too tired, or is it lazy, to edit this pod on Sunday evening is that I can now add this edit to congratulate the Irish women for their off-the-charts 29-27 victory over New Zealand in the WXV over in Vancouver. I won't pretend I stayed up got up at 3 a.m., but I guarantee I will be watching it back. From the few clips I've seen, it seems like even if there is a glass ceiling above this team, it's Aoife wafer thin. Congrats to all.
Now, going back to Leinster's win over the Dragons, Jack Conan's post-match reaction went like this, quote, "We fairly got it in the neck at halftime. The ruck stuff was terrible. We knew the Dragons would be dogged, and they were. We showed up pretty well in the second half, but we can't afford to take 40 minutes to sort the ruck out. So that was a little bit frustrating," end quote. And from our Facebook page, we had a comment from Greg Kelly, who says, Leinster looked disjointed in the first 40. Could be early season problems, but to be fair, I think the Dragons were better than they have been in recent years. Things looked a little cleaner when Joe and Josh came in. Deegan had another good showing, and I really have to wonder what he's still doing here. He should have gone last year, and quite frankly, he is squandering his talent at Leinster. But that's an interesting perspective on it. Listen, we always leave a post open on the Facebook page after the full-time whistle for Leinster and Ireland game, so why don't you join in the conversation? All of which brings us to our final thoughts for the weekend's rugby, starting with Rich.
Yeah, it's been an interesting first couple of weeks of the URC, coming back to getting back into it slowly. We also had the ending of the rugby championship, and that's gone interestingly. I mean, not so much in terms of who was going to win it, because we're always going to win it, as in South Africa, but the almost demise of Australian rugby is sad to see, to be honest. Argentina had their best showing in the competition since they joined it, which is also very good to see, though not as unsurprising as the Australian story. And the All Blacks are in transition. They're certainly not there yet. No doubt they'll build up to being a force to be reckoned with, an unstoppable force to be reckoned with, because they already are a force to be reckoned with in the coming months and years. But definitely a lot of work in progress there. As there is most certainly with Australia. Joe Schmidt certainly has his work cut out. As to the URC, it's been entertaining. Already some shock results. You've already alluded to the Parma one, which makes it even more surprising is the fact that there's talk of Parma folding financially, which is never a nice thing to hear. And people were already all the carrion eaters were already talking about who's going to replace them, etc. So clearly they're still very much alive and kicking, and certainly that's a bunch of very proud men at Parma, and I really do hope that they stay in the competition, because already last year they were showing signs of a very entertaining brand of rugby. For the others, it's been hit and miss for most teams. Yes, it's early season blues for most teams. I don't think anybody's really shone from any of the teams yet. But it's very much early doors.
Yeah, I mean, like for Leinster's point of view, like it's we found loads wrong and loads to work on, but with when 10 points are on the board, you definitely at least going in the right direction anyway,
Absolutely.
and hopefully all those problems are solved when it gets to May. What did you make of it all, Jay?
Yeah, I guess much the same. The 1,000 yard version of it is job done. 2 matches, 10 points,
Yeah.
top of the log. I mean, really, it's our cup runneth over in terms of what we can complain about. Um, it's a platitude, right, in terms of where we should be and the performances that we really want to see, but it's just fact, right? We've read there was 10 on offer, we took 10. Um, the performance has obviously left a lot to be desired, but as you said, it's early season. We have an awful lot of kind of talent to come back into the fold. Pretty much our full first choice front row, RG Snyman, the Jordy Barrett, Henshaw, Ryan Baird. There's so many guys that are still Doris, right? The captain hasn't played yet. So it's there's plenty of talent still to come in to improve our performances and to help those young guys. And that's another point, is that we've blooded 3 or 4 young guys that I think that's probably going to pay dividends in that South Africa tour this year. There's guys there that have gotten 2 games under their belt now, like Deeney, etc., and who that will stand to them big time, and that will stand to us ultimately. I think we should, hope to see us trust the kids more. I've loved to see Sam last week. I love seeing Fintan Gunn this week. Even further afield, Ben Murphy and Connacht, like these things pay off. These things can work if you give these guys a chance.
Yeah.
Very very interesting to see Doris in the coaching box. Can be it'd be great to see how that works out. You don't want to cloud his mind too much because he's already quite good on the pitch in terms of player clarity and leadership and stuff. But in terms of what the coaching box ticket want of him, obviously more clarity is never a bad thing, as long as it's not, he's not sitting there before he runs into burst somebody to say, I wonder how Jack wants me to burst this guy. He still needs to play how Caelan Doris plays rugby, but yeah, and all eyes on Croker, obviously. I think it's important that we go out to Bennington next week and build on this. Like if we trip up next week now, that'd be a bit of a disaster rolling into the kind of Munster game, right? We don't want to let the group take that sort of confidence hit. We want to be on an upward arc for the whole time. And then finally, last word for the man himself, the man of the day, right? Cian Healy. Massive congratulations on an absolute legend of the club. Particularly given how he's apparently indestructible. His career has been quote unquote ended 6 or 7 times that I can count, but he just keeps coming back and trucking for us. So massive congratulations for him.
Absolutely. Yeah, just on that Caelan Doris and the coaching box thing, I mean, I think that's interesting. I'm surprised teams haven't done that more often, because, I mean, I like when a lot of times when I go to matches in Donnybrook, the media box is literally at the end of the row. It's more of a row. I wouldn't call it a box at Donnybrook, but at the end of the row is where the visiting team, that's their coaching box. You're literally sitting right beside them, so you get an idea of what they're doing. And it's like there's laptops, and they have to talk, and they have to look back over plays and sets, and they're doing so many things. And that's it's literally the nerve center of what's going on. And so to have that link between, just to have, Doris spend a bit of time in there and see what they're doing and see what's happening on the pitch. And you've got a perfect player out there playing his role as well. Like, Conan is no better man to be out there doing what Doris would be doing out there. And I think that's one of the reasons as well why Ringrose and Ryan have been playing but still haven't been captain. It's like he's getting a sense of what it's, so when he's out on the pitch, he'll know what's going on up there as well. He'll know have a better idea of what they're looking for. I'm surprised more teams don't do that, but listen, we'll see if we get any advantage of that down the line. But listen, it was like you say, it was a good weekend, and in terms of results, 2 weeks, 10 points, can't really say too much more. It's only September now as we're talking, so down the line, there'll be more matches and more players coming in and out of the mix, and maybe injuries as well. Hopefully not, but it's the reality of rugby. So we'll be coming back to this subject every 3 or 4 weeks and seeing where we stand, and maybe starting to look at bolters or who might make the tour and be backup kind of players and stuff. So there's plenty to harp on there, but this has been a decent start. So thanks, lads, for that. Okay, that's brilliant, lads. We're going to leave it there. Many thanks again to Rich and Jay for joining me, and I hope to have you both on again soon. Thanks, lads.
Thanks, Jeff.
And as for our next batch of Harpin, keep an eye on our YouTube channel during the week for the first of our bonus chats looking ahead towards the 2025 Lions Tour, and also our 80+ column, which will post on Wednesday. After that, we'll be turning our attention to our trip to play Benetton, so be sure to follow us on any or all of our social media platforms, which you'll find at linktree/Harpin On Rugby. In the meantime, stay safe, everyone. Slán.